Alcoholism. It's something that plagues Australian culture. And what better way to add fuel to the fire than making a podcast about drinking with your mates? In case you're not familiar, there's a podcast on YouTube by the name of Coldones, hosted by two Australian content creators. They are Anything for Views, or Chad, a former Twitch streamer who was banned off the platform and is now a full-time podcast host thanks to the success of Coldones. And maxmoefoe, or Max, the co-host of the podcast, and a YouTuber with nearly 3 million subscribers who hasn't uploaded on his main channel in over 3 years, with the first episode of the podcast titled Coming Out, featuring Pyrocynical and Dull and Dark Cold Ones, having been released on November 11th, 2018. Originally, Chad was the only host of Cold Ones after he interviewed Max on an episode titled Do We Still Talk To, featuring maxmoefoe Cold Ones, which was released on December 10th, 2018, Chad decided to make Max a permanent co-host. With all of this being said, I find the Cold Ones podcast to be very entertaining. Allow me to tell you why. Ever since the podcast episode with Sherdleys titled Chillin' with Sherdleys Cold Ones was released, Cold Ones has done this thing where they'll put a clip of the end of the podcast at the very beginning of the episode. These usually instantly captivate me, since by this point, they're completely and utterly wasted. And on that note, the outros are usually funny as all hell. Everyone is just grogged up like there's no tomorrow, and they'll just start doing the most spasticated shit out there. It's great. For instance, on the Super Mega episode, by the end of it, Matt's, one of the Super Mega members, glasses are broken, and Ryan, the other Super Mega member, pulls Chad's pants down, revealing his bare ass and cock. Obviously that's censored and is a Patreon exclusive because Chad loves money. Also, Matt nearly tips over the studio's table by hanging on to Chad, resulting in him falling off his chair. It's scuffed perfection. There's been 2 episodes of the podcast where Chad and Max have played a game of some sort with their guest. On the episode with Swagger Souls, they played a game called the Demonetization Drinking Game, where anytime they break a rule that can be deemed as something worth of demonetization, such as saying a really naughty word, they have to pour beer into a cup with Susan Wojcicki's face on it, and by the end of it, whoever has broken the most rules has to drink out of it at the end of the podcast. Not a surprise that Chad was the one that broke the most rules and had to end up drinking out of it. This game has only been featured in this one episode of the podcast. However, they tweeted out on the Cold Ones Twitter on September 17th that if the tweet hit 1,000 likes, they'd bring it back for the next episode. Currently, the tweet sits at over 3.2k likes, but they never brought it back, unfortunately. I'm hoping that they do bring it back someday, though. On the episode of Nerd City, they played a game that they called the Demonetization Breathalyzer. The way the game works is that every 15 to 20 minutes, they have to blow into the breathalyzer to see who is the least drunk, and that person has to take a shot of tequila every time. In comparison to the other game, this one wasn't as fun, so I wouldn't mind not seeing this one again in the future. The editing of the podcast is the cherry on top. Scott and Prezzo, the podcast editors, do an excellent job. At the start of the podcast, like I mentioned earlier, you've got a clip of the podcast towards the end with the iconic Banjo-Kazooie music in the background. Then you've got the text that says one Cold Ones episode earlier. And finally, the lovely animation of the Cold Ones logo coming into frame. At Cold Ones, they seem to have a 3-camera setup, and they'll keep constantly switching from camera to camera. This is ideal for maintaining interest, as if they didn't do this and they just stayed on one camera, it might be a bit bland to look at regardless of the beautiful aesthetic they've got going on with the set. I've seen podcasts where they'll just have one camera setup, and that can get boring to stare at. So it's good that they've got 3 set up and they switch from camera to camera when needed. Not only that, but when there's something happening, usually the wacky and whimsical things that happen towards the end of the episodes, Scott or Yuri will take a camera and film it, so they'll pan over to that one. It just keeps me interested in viewing the video version as opposed to just listening to the audio version on Spotify. Another thing is the visual gags that they do. For instance, on the latest episode of the podcast with Pyrocynical, the lads got sent some alcohol in the mail by a fan, and they asked for his name. Scott said Matthias, but Pyro was saying it Mitt Romney. So you see a picture of Mitt Romney's face come up next to some text that says, "Thanks Mitt Romney." But that's not all. They did this edit on his face where they turned him from looking happy to looking incredibly depressed. It's just small little details like that not everyone may notice, but for those who do, like me, we appreciate them. Last thing with the editing is that whenever they swear, if it's censored, they'll censor it with an iconic meme to the maxmoefoe / anything for views cinematic universe, such as the "My Name Jeff" meme. On that note, I do hope that one day we'll see Channing Tatum on the podcast, as that's when Cold Ones will truly become the greatest podcast of all time. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you liked the video, you can feel free to drop it a like, drop me a sub, share this video with your family and friends, follow me on Twitter, ShampyYT, join my Discord server down below. Also, be sure to follow my Twitch, twitch.tv/ShampyLive. But besides that, I'll see you all next one. Take care, and goodbye.